This is my 2018 Ford F150 XLT model with the 5-liter V8 Coyote motor. It desperately needs a brake job, and that's what we're going to do in this video. I'm Jerry. Welcome to the Mostly Useless Garage. This is the full-on city truck spec with the super cab and this shorty 5.5-foot bed. I bought this about 7 years ago in this exact trim level with this sticker, these black rims, this grille, and this black interior with red accents. So let's get this into the garage and get this job going. Here's the problem. These are the original brakes and I've only ever replaced the rear pads. Fun fact, F-150s tend to wear out the rear pads before the fronts. But check out the rust on these guys. And I would be fine neglecting them even further, but the stopping performance is downright hazardous. If you're new to the channel, I'm glad you're here. Check out some of my other videos about my Mazda Miata. I install mods, fix stuff, and I even did an engine swap. But if you want to see more F-150 work truck content, please like, subscribe, and drop me a comment below. I read them all. Now, back to the brakes and let me show you what we got. These are the Comfort Max brake package for a Ford F-150 from Max Advanced Brakes. They include these rotors with a geomet coating for rust protection, and they meet all OE specifications including weight and vane count. Also, we get these Elite Max brake pads, which are an OE Plus upgrade for more demanding brake performance, like towing, and in the box are a bag of clips and some Moly lubricant. Before we work on the rear brakes, this truck has an electric parking brake, which means we need to put it into maintenance mode. The steps are to push in and hold the button down while holding the throttle pedal to the floor. Key on for 5 seconds, key off, then key on again, continuing to hold the button and pedal down. Okay, good. Now it says parking brake service mode. Next, even if half your truck is sticking out of the garage, it's best practice to chock the front wheels before jacking up the rear. Keeping this video beginner friendly, we also crack loose the 21mm lug nuts with a breaker bar. Then the floor jack goes under the differential with a rubber pad like this hockey puck so we don't dent anything. Ooh, feels pretty sketchy. And now we place jack stands under the axle. Taking a closer look at these brakes, notice the caliper piston is fully extended because the inboard pad is completely worn down. Interesting. Now we use a little PB blaster penetrant on these slide pin bolts and wire wheel off the surface rust so our socket can make a good love connection. With careful use of a breaker bar holding the pin with vice grips, we remove the first of 2 bolts. Notice there's a bit of red Loctite on it. Now we slide the caliper off and hang it up with a bungee cord so we don't damage the brake hose. Remove the brake pads. Seems to have a lot of material on it here. The inner one is dead. Remove the rotor, and this thing looks super rusty. Oh man. Get rid of the old pad clips, and wire wheel rust off the important spots, including the hub face. Now we can pull one of the slide pins, clean off the old grease, and use some brake caliper lube to coat the bore and pin. Then slide the pin back in and make sure it moves freely. And lube up the boot. There's 2, so we do the same process for the other one. And now we can pop on the new rotor. This is a ratcheting caliper piston retractor tool. I prefer it over a big C-clamp. Next up is to use this synthetic Moly lube, and I like to apply it to the caliper piston, arms, and bracket directly. Then we install the pad hardware clips, the pads with a bit of lube on the contact points, and reinstall the caliper and slide pin bolts with a touch of red Loctite since that's what it came with. There we have it, a new rotor, new pads and clips, all torqued up to spec. I did the other side off camera, so it's time to bleed the brakes. On these rust belt calipers, it's likely the bleeder screws are rusted solid. So a trick I learned from an old friend is to first try to tighten it to break it free, then loosen. But that doesn't work here. Next, we break out my trusty butane creme brulee lighter and give it the fire. And give it a shot of PB Blaster to rapidly cool and draw in the penetrant. There we go. So now it's free. We can go ahead and bleed this thing. What we have here is a hand-operated vacuum bleeder that's available from Harbor Freight or Amazon. This part goes onto the bleeder screw nipple. This is the fluid reservoir, and this is a vacuum gauge. Now, this isn't as good as doing a full pedal bleed, but if you're solo, this works well enough. Also note that the brake bleed order is right rear, right front, and left front, working from the furthest caliper to the master cylinder to the closest by line distance. Notice we're seeing a steady stream of small bubbles in the hose, and that's normal because a little air slips past the rubber cap. But what we're looking for are a series of large bubbles from the brake line itself. And our new brake fluid of choice is Motul 5.1, which is non-silicon based and compatible with all DOT 3 and 4 specifications. With the old fluid drained almost to the bottom, we top up the reservoir and keep an eye on it as we bleed. And here's what the old fluid looks like. Not too dark, but definitely overdue for a bleed. Alright, so now that we got the brake fluid bled properly on this one and the one on the other side, we just need to put this cap back on. Back inside, we need to take the parking brake out of service mode by doing the same procedure as before, but this time we pull the parking brake switch. Pull, foot to the floor on the gas, key on, key off, key on again. There we go. You can hear the parking brake do its thing, so let's just test it now. Let's pull it. Onto the fronts, and just like we did for the rears, let's safely lift the truck and put it on jack stands. Alright, check this out. This caliper looks huge. It looks like the brake pad material is getting low. These rotors are absolutely rusted solid. This is actually the last corner after doing the front right off camera, and I'm feeling pretty confident. We apply penetrant and clean off the rust. And we turn the wheel to allow more access. Now it's just a simple matter of removing the guide pin bolts. Easy. Yep, I just did that. This is the mostly useless garage. But this is the reason why people have given up fixing stuff, isn't it? This is a representation of fear. Fear that I can't do this job, I'm gonna screw it up. Of course, we got a lot of good excuses to not even try, right? I'm not a mechanic. I can afford to pay a pro. My time is money. But it's just fear. Look, let me tell you, we are smart and capable people. We can learn, grow, and become better. Yes, there'll be a few broken bolts, but we will figure it out. And along the way, we'll unlock a few super satisfying wrenching achievements and end up feeling like a god. All right, good pep talk. Let's go fix this. Now we can remove the other slide pin bolt. Lefty-loosey this time. Lever off the caliper and hang it up. Then we remove the two 21mm caliper bracket bolts and remove the pads and bracket, chuck the old rotor, and wire wheel off that Canadian rust. Apologies for my messy workbench here. This is a working workbench. After a bit of cleanup, just like the rears, we can now clean and grease the slide pins. And do the same for the other one. And install the new pad hardware clips. Then, back at the brake caliper, we use our ratcheting spreader to push back the dual pistons. Brake clean the rotor. Reinstall the caliper bracket bolts with a bit of Loctite. Torque and index mark them, which is an easy visual to see if bolts have moved since they were tightened. Now we can get the new Elite Max pads installed. Grease the contact points, slide the caliper back on, and reinstall one of the two slide pin bolts. And for completeness, torque it to 27 foot-pounds. Since it's getting late and I can't get a replacement bolt until tomorrow, we get the wheel back on, put it on the ground, and fill the reservoir to the max mark. And even though I gotta take this off later to put in that caliper bolt when I finally get one, it's good practice to torque up the lugs to spec. The next day, I was able to source this grade 8.8 bolt from Amazon. But Amazon fasteners are always a little sus, especially when used on critical systems like our brakes. So this is just a temporary measure until I can get the proper bolt. The last often overlooked step with installing brakes is the burnishing cycle or bedding your brakes. This mates the brake pad friction material to the surface of the rotor, laying down a thin layer of material that makes all the difference. If you skip this step, as most people do, you risk uneven pad wear, vibrations, and reduced braking performance when you need it most. The first step is to find a quiet area where you can perform this procedure where there's not a lot of traffic, because we do need to do some aggressive braking. Now, you don't have to drive like a maniac, but you do need to accelerate up to 55 kilometers per hour and decelerate or brake aggressively to 5 kilometers an hour. This is the first one. We'll accelerate up to 55 and then hit the brakes. Okay, let's do that once. That's twice. That's 3 times. Now we turn around and do 3 more 55 to 5 kilometer heavy decels for a total of 6, and then follow it up with 6 more 55 to 5 kilometer decelerations with moderate brake pressure. Then we go for a 6 to 8 minute cool down drive with no heavy braking or full stops, and finally park the vehicle for at least 30 minutes to allow the brakes to cool. Alright, here I am back at home again. We got this thing off because I found this. Rather, I purchased this. This is a guide pin and bolt kit for this truck, and I got it from Napa. To this day, I don't know how the Cabbage people own a multinational parts store, but I'm thankful that they do. All we really need is this. Interestingly, I was fretting about the grade of bolt, and this thing that came with it doesn't have any indication of its grade. Alright, so that's looking good, and I got a couple of extra slide pins and 1 extra bolt in case I end up breaking another one. It's the next morning, and I'm on my way to the job site. Along the way, why don't I talk about the performance and value of these brakes. Alright, straight away, first few braking events in my residential area here, and wow. The brakes feel amazing. Previously, with the old brakes, the pedal engagement point where the brakes start to bite were at the like 65-70% of the way down the pedal travel, which is really not fun, feels very dangerous. But right now, even just braking for the stop sign here, wow, it's almost immediate. Within that first 10, 15, 20% of the pedal travel, I can already feel the truck slowing down. Yeah, that first initial bite, that 10, 15%, as you progress into that 30, 35%, that's when the brakes start to really be more aggressive and provide more stopping power. And I'm not hearing any squeaking or feeling vibrations through the pedal, so that's a good sign. Yeah, and the modulation feels good as you're kind of rolling to a stop. You're not kind of binding up the brakes. You're kind of feathering that brake pedal. It feels good. Now, compared to the old brakes, which were clearly in terrible condition, and that's just owner neglect, these are performing way better. The truck feels almost transformed. So I should note that I'm not sponsored by Max Advanced Brakes. I purchased this brake kit at full retail price with my own money, and I'm kind of happy to do so. They are located in Canada, so this is, although not made in Canada, is a Canadian company. And not only that, they're local to my city in the Greater Toronto area. So I think that's a good place to end this video. That's a wrap on the Max Advanced Brakes Comfort Max brake package. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly enjoyed making it. Until next time, you're awesome. I'm mostly useless. Thanks very much for watching.